Let's welcome to the show, Matich.
Well, thank you, Tracy. What an intro. I was wondering who that was for a second.
There seems to be such a sense of resilience and you seem to be like on the ball, like thinking. Where does that come from? Is that from your upbringing?
I'm one of these few people that actually love public speaking.
You've leapt into business, politics and parenthood. What's one leap that didn't land the way you had hoped but taught you the most?
Here's the thing, like a lot of people who go into politics position themselves to be there. They spend 10 or 12 years, they join the party, they get to know people, they forge out their career, which community groups they connect with and what they're going to do. And they spend a decade setting themselves up to be in a position to be able to run.
Hello and welcome to the Real Biz Live Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding and life from the Horizon Digital podcast recording studio here in Perth. I'm your host, Tracy Fryer, the founder of Design Studio Perth, and to celebrate the launch of Season 2 of the show, Design Studio Perth is offering all our listeners a free brand discovery. So if you find yourself simply over haphazard branding, use the link in the show notes below to book in a time to have a chat. Now, the Real Biz Live Chronicles is on a mission to become one of Australia's leading business podcasts, but in order to do that, we please need your help. If you do enjoy today's episode, which I have no doubt that you will, we ask that you please like and subscribe to our channels below. What happens when you combine the energy of a live wire, the heart of a community builder, and the mind of a straight-talking entrepreneur? You get someone who's not just building businesses, but building places where people actually want to be. A person who doesn't just talk about revitalising a town, he does something about it. From campaigning in the WA state election to leading the local Chamber of Commerce, he's a man on a mission to energise small business, champion local jobs and bring real economic growth to his hometown. But that's just one layer. At the centre of Midland, there's a place that buzzes with creativity, connection and caffeine, and it's one of my favourite places, I have to say. A place where business deals happen over flat whites, where artists showcase their work and where strangers become mates. That place, the Crooked Spire Coffee and Art House in Midland. And the person who brought it to life, that's who we're talking to today. He's spontaneous, enthusiastic, empathetic, and unapologetically real. He trusts from the start, values loyalty above all, and lives by the motto, say what you mean and do what you say. He doesn't talk about selflessness, but lives it. He's the kind of guy who quietly opens doors for others. In fact, he's the one who saw something in me and gave me the opportunity to be on the Swan Chamber Board of Commerce. That moment had a real positive impact on how I show up in the business world. And if he had a theme song, it would be Staying Alive by the Bee Gees, because he's the kind of guy who dances through life to that beat, keeping things light, never takes himself too seriously, but always leaves a lasting impact. Let's welcome to the show, Matich. Mike, welcome.
Well, thank you, Tracy. What an intro. I was wondering who that was for a second.
It was the second time I had to do it because Tracy forgot to press record. So thank you, Mike. You're very patient.
That's all right. That's right. But look, very flattering intro. Really appreciate it.
It is all the truth, Mike. And yes, thank you for the opportunities that you brought into my life as well.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I am stoked to have you here today. Mike, when you walk into a room, what energy do you hope people feel? And what energy do you think they actually feel when they engage with you?
Look, I honestly want every person I interact with to leave feeling better about themselves. I think, you meet some people and they tell you a story and it's all about them. And I like to give people that space to be able to tell their own story. Inside I'm an extrovert and I want to talk and say things, but deep down I actually just want everyone to leave feeling better about themselves. I like everybody. I believe everybody needs to feel important and should be, regardless of where they sit in life and what's going on in the world right now. So that's really my goal when I walk into a room. Often, even though I can look on the outside that I'm very extroverted, I can be absolutely packing my dacks as well.
Oh, really?
Just especially in a room that I'm not familiar with.
Sure.
And different kinds of people that maybe I haven't interacted with before, I can feel quite intimidated. And so I'll still put on a facade and I'll still, to most, appear like I know what I'm doing and I'm in control in this room. But inside I'm trying to find my space. And I think most people do when they walk into a room.
I think so, yeah. I must say you never seem to falter and you're always such high energy, so I would never know any different.
Good to know.
Mike, take us back. Where did your entrepreneurial journey begin?
Okay, great. Yeah, do you know what? When I was a kid, there was a show on TV called Family Ties. Now it had Michael J. Fox before he was Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And he was this guy. He never wore jeans. He always wore like business clothes. When he went to school, he carried a briefcase. And I used to watch that show, and I used to just my dream was just to be a businessman. I didn't know what that meant or what it looked like, but I always just wanted to be in business, and I loved that character. And so that's what really inspired me to want to be in business. But it did take me a while to get there.
And do you feel there's still part of your business journey that you're still figuring out?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think the more that you know, the more you realise there's so much more you don't know. I think, and I think when you're young and very young, you can come into something and think, oh, I know better, or I know this.
Completely.
And you think about all the knowledge that exists in business or any sphere, and you think you know a good portion of it. And I think wisdom comes with, as you grow and as you know more, that with wisdom you realise how little you actually know. And the answer could be just currently out of your current realm of understanding right now. And so constantly you've got to be looking elsewhere and looking even to other industries and to see what's happening there and how you can translate that into your business.
Now, Mike, I've heard the story. Before our listeners, I'd love to go back to how Crooked Spire was born.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, look, the story goes back a little bit before that as well. So for about 10 years, I worked in a large Australian steel manufacturing business and had a few different roles in there. And I after 10 years, I got the sack. I got pulled into the office by HR and said your performance wasn't up to scratch and it was time to move. Now, this was no surprise to me because I knew my performance was really bad, so much so I just hated working in the steel industry.
Oh, fair enough.
And I think in 1 month I attended 15 job interviews.
Oh, my goodness.
So it wasn't a surprise.
Hectic schedule.
Yeah, it was. But within that next year, I learned a lot about myself. So I went out and a customer's customer heard about what had happened. And they, and I had people who were quite upset because they liked dealing with me. They liked what I brought. And they gave me a job. And it was a business development role, and it was helping them set up a side of a business they hadn't had before. It was a 3-month contract. Now, I lasted 6 months when I got pulled into the office and the boss said, Mike, you've done a great job, but we can't afford you anymore, or you're costing us too much. It's time to move on. So that was the second time I got sacked in a year.
Hey.
So made a few phone calls, contacted a guy that I knew had bought this business of the previous company that I worked for 10 years. And they paid, that company paid something in the vicinity of $20 million for it. Wow. They ran it for 18 months and then shut it down. The business had been mothballed for 18 months, and I knocked on this guy's door who bought everything for $400,000 and said, hey, let me run it. And he's like, okay, great. I'll let you run it. So I picked that up, and for 3 months, I worked this business. He wouldn't let me employ any staff. I had one guy, and so I called favours from all these guys who'd worked in this business for many, many years. We made it work. We made our first couple of sales that paid my wage for the last 3 months, and then the owner went, "This is not quick enough." They shut it down, didn't pay me the final payment, and sent me on my way.
Right.
So I was driving home. And now this is the third time in a year that I'd lost my job.
Hectic.
At this stage, I had 2 kids, a mortgage, and didn't have my final payment before Christmas, not even enough time to get Centrelink. So as I'm driving home, I see a sign at a brewery next to my house that says casual gardener and maintenance man needed.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, well, I'm casual. and I can garden. So I went in there and negotiated a phenomenal deal. It was a 2-day-a-week deal at this brewery, and it was basically raking the lawns, cleaning the gardens. And when they said, how much do you want? I said, what did you pay your last guy? They said $25 an hour. Now, me being a master negotiator and being totally clueless, I just said, well, I'm $27 an hour, which is not enough to feed your family on 2 days a week or pay your mortgage. And so for the next 8 months, I didn't pay my mortgage. So we put that on hold. We were going to financial counselling, getting support from the local charity groups, which was very which is very humbling,
Of
especially at the
course.
time. And it was, but I learned a lot through that journey. So, I learned very quickly that my time was worth a lot more than that. So I employed a younger person to come and work with me. And so then they got paid their wage and I took the extra and went, okay, now I'm on $36 an hour. Then when I picked up other contracts, it became $45 or $50 an hour. And then I just, by chance happened to meet, I wasn't even there actually, one of the kids that I had working with me that day, he was a naughty kid from the youth group that I ran,
Right.
got him to WAG school. So I could attend a charity to get $200 off a phone bill.
Right.
And when the owner of the actual site that the brewery was on, Jerry Hansen, drove past and noticed that the gardens of this brewery were just getting better and better and better. So he pulled up to this kid who was 15, 16, and he was a naughty kid. And he said, hey, I've got gardens at my resort. Do you want a job? Do you want an apprenticeship? And the kid went, nah, not interested. Because he was wagging school.
Of course.
He's not even supposed to have a job. So he said, here's my card. Give this to your boss. Come and see me. So it took me about 2 weeks to get up the courage to call Jerry because he's a big figure in Perth. He builds high-rise apartment buildings for Finbar, $100 million apartment here or $180 million apartment there. So I was a bit nervous, but I went and saw him and he said, what's your rate? I said, it's $45 an hour.
Nice.
And he said to me, you're $15 an hour more than my current guy. And I was like, well, it was great to meet you. Thanks so much. As I drove out from there, I got a call from the brewery boss who said, Mike, you've done such a good job. We don't need you anymore.
Oh, my goodness.
We'll call you when we've got work for you. Now, this stage, he was my only contract. And as long as I had $2 a day to feed my kids milk and bread, we didn't eat half the time for those number of months.
Wow.
So that was on the Friday, and I was driving home from church on West Swan Road and I get this call, and it's Jerry Hansen, and he says, "Come and see me." And I was literally right in front of where he was. So I pulled in, had a beer with him, and he said, "I've sacked that guy. You start tomorrow." And he goes,
goodness.
He goes, "You can work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whatever you want, and just you can come and run the gardens here at my resort." And I said to him, "Oh, what about my staff?" Now, at this stage, I didn't have any. But I said, "What about my staff?" And he goes, "How many you got?" Went 2. And he goes, "Well, they can come as well, but I'm not paying them what I'm paying you.
Sure.
I'll pay them what you pay them plus a little bit more." So that night, we went and celebrated for the first time in those 8 months.
Wow.
We went down to Alfred's, shouted ourselves a burger, and that started that journey of my own business. That was where that journey started. So a few years later and down the tracks, after being with Jerry on that site, very quickly he realised he could use me within his construction business, and I ended up being on the management team there and running a lot of his manufacturing. And he would often just give you projects, and you'd have to build a high rise worth of structural steel and make a project happen, which is an area that I thrived in, just having to be a leader and lead and make things happen, and I really enjoyed that. And then fast forward a few years later, the church that I was involved with was moving from their base where they'd been for about 50 years in Morley and moving to Midland. And there was a derelict building site that they took on, and it was an old derelict building factory site. It was an old army surplus building. It had been there for many years, but it had been closed for about 5 or 8 years, and it was boarded up. It was horrible. So the church took the lease on. The idea was to run a church there, and in that we were building this large cafe in the foyer area. No, so that was a volunteer process, and we spent a year, on our weekends volunteering and pulling community in together to build it. And towards the end, we're building this cafe, and I was very, very heavily involved in leading that project. And I said to my wife, I'd love to have a crack at something like this. And she happened to mention it to the director of the church. And he said, well, you know what, we were not sure how we were going to do it. We're going to try and staff with volunteers, but we feel it's bigger than that. So, Mike, if you want to do this, we'll sublease it to you and you can run it. And from that point, I was too scared to ask my accountant how I could afford it.
Yeah.
And my accountant never asked me, so we just signed a lease and off we went. So that's how the journey of Crooked Spire started.
Amazing, Mike. I'd heard parts of that story, but just, there's some things that I didn't know. I have a question. During those 8 months where it was so sort of turbulent, you've got a young family to support, and it just sounded like every opportunity kind of opened itself at the right time. What kept you going during those times? Because was there times you wanted to give up?
Look, there certainly was. And I had people who were in my corner, mentors, who were telling me going, Mike, I don't think this is working. What's your fallback plan? Because by this stage, I just started a gardening business.
Yeah.
And when you're relying on yourself, like it's next level, and business owners get this. And this is what I love is you can meet a business owner at any, and it doesn't matter what business they're in. There's this instant connection that you have because you know how tough it is, and it's relying on you.
Yeah.
And if you don't work, if you don't turn up, the business doesn't work.
No.
You don't have the money and you don't feed your family. So this is what I love about business is that connection with other people who just get it. But for me, that question, can you remind me the question?
It was, how did you keep going? There were some pretty turbulent times. Was there ever a time you just wanted to give up, or was it your faith that kept you going?
Look, faith was definitely a part of it. I mean, I had mentors in my life who were going, Mike, I don't think this is working. And I'm like, no. This is what I'm doing. I'm going down this path.
Yeah.
And I had to push that aside. It's amazing how sometimes just an opportunity can come like that. It's just that one talk, it's that one conversation, that one connection. I remember I knew I didn't have any work lined up for the week, and so I thought I'd go door knocking through the community that I lived. And by this stage, I was borrowing a trailer. I had my wife's car. I had a lawnmower and a whippersnapper I bought off a garage sale, and I was just making stuff up. So I would rock up to house, I'd knock on the doors, and what I noticed was people with nice lawns, they were already being looked after or doing it themselves.
Right.
But what I did notice was people with horrible lawns, they wanted it done.
Yeah.
But I'd knock on their door, and I worked this out that if I'd knock on their door on a Monday and a Tuesday, they'd say, "Oh, I don't have the money." I go, "Oh, no, not today. I'm going to do it Friday," because I knew that people often got paid on Thursday or Friday.
Right.
And whether they were pensioners or not, it was like, "Hey, I can mow your lawn for $35, or I can do this for I'd started learning how to do add-on sales. I noticed you got roses. Would you like some chook poo for that? That's $20. I didn't know what a bag of chook poo cost. It was like $4, and I was like, "This is awesome," and I just needed a handful.
Yeah.
I don't even think it was good for the roses. But you learn a lot through that process.
Yeah,
right?
I can imagine.
And so you have to find those ways to make it happen. But look, I had so many people. I had people who loved me, who believed in me, who were saying, "Mike, I think it's time you back out and just go find yourself a job." And for me, I was like, "Nah, not doing it. This is my future."
And was it just like a inner calling that you felt you had to keep going on that path?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think so because traditionally those people that I allowed to speak in my life, they had a very loud voice in my life, and so I would often run lots of things by them, and I would gather their wisdom and go, okay, yes, and I would make decisions based on what they told me. But this was something different. This was something, well, I'm responsible for this, and if it's going to happen, I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah. And Mike, there seems to be such a sense of resilience, and you seem to be on the ball, thinking. Where does that come from? Is that from your upbringing, or have you always been that way?
I don't know. I like to observe. I like to watch people. I like to watch what happens. One of my things that I enjoy, I'm one of these few people that actually love public speaking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're a very rare breed.
I enjoy it.
Do you?
I do. It's standing in front and doing things and trying to move a crowd and work a crowd.
You are great at it though, so yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So look, I really enjoy it. So I watch other people doing it. And so I love, I remember watching Larry Emder when he was running The Price is Right. Yes. And when he was excited, he would roll onto the balls of his feet. And so I would use that when I was speaking. And so I would speak, and to show excitement, I would roll onto the balls of my feet. Or I'd be watching someone present or speak, and I noticed they'd hang their feet just over the edge of the stage.
Right.
And, that's probably a bit dangerous.
Probably.
But for me, it crosses over this barrier that was a disconnect between the host or the speaker and the audience. And I just love those nuances of those different things. So for me, I like to look at things. I like design like you do.
Yes.
I appreciate good design and good branding. And often will be quite critical when I see the stuff that's really bad.
Same.
Yeah. So, I don't know if it was anything that it came from anyone, and it's just something that has always really interested me.
Yeah. And Mike, you've created Crooked Spire. It's a wonderful place where creators can thrive and people can connect. Where do you go when you need to connect? Because I know you run a very busy life, you're constantly on the go. Where do you go when you need to have that downtime?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting one. I love people, and so I love connecting with people. So for me, walking out into the cafe space and meeting people in the cafe, and whether they're regulars or new, and I have this really probably. I have this thing that when I look out, if I see someone, I'm like, I wonder what they do.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I wonder what they're doing. And if they're working on a computer and you go, oh, they look like they're in business. I wonder what they're doing. And so I'm actually quite fascinated by people.
Yes.
And so sometimes I'll just jump out there and start clearing plates. And it's not something I usually do. The staff do all of that stuff.
Yeah, I've seen you do random stuff like that.
But I'll go. It's because I'm trying to get an understanding of who's here and what are they doing and what they're about. Because I really love connecting with people.
I remember you also told me the actual tables at Crooked Spire, they were from, now forgive me if I get this wrong, it was from your wife's father's, when he was an apprentice. The tables were, is that right?
Yeah, so look, we're based in Midland, and it's a very large site there. So the cafe itself has about 100 seats. Then we've got a function centre that holds 320. Then we've got a business boardroom and some meeting rooms and a large alfresco area at the front too. So it's a really large place. We've got these old workbenches that are these communal sort of communal tables, workspaces, and they're thick jarrah. They're actually from the Midland Railway workshops,
That's it, yeah.
and those for that region, that lots of people worked in that place. It was a huge industry in Midland, and so when they shut it down and when they finally sold off those assets, we went to the auction and I bought all these large tables, and they're really stunning and beautiful. But when my wife's grandfather walked in, they're Italian, so Nonno Joe we call him.
Right, yeah.
He walked in, he goes, I know there's a bench. There's a bench. I work on this one. Well, I'm 19, assistant to the fitter. So he's telling us.
That's a great impression, by the way, Mike.
Believe it or not, that's exactly how he sounds.
I think you nailed that, like flying colours.
So he was about 90 at the time.
Wow,
and he
yeah.
said when he was 19, he was an assistant to the fitter at this bench. So
That's it,
just
wow.
even that bit of furniture just has so much history and life in it.
Nostalgia,
Yeah, it's just really beautiful.
So beautiful. I'm going to do a shameless plug for you. If you have not been to the Crooked Spire Coffee House, it is a beautiful place. Guys, if you want to impress your lady or vice versa, it's a very, very special place. Just the atmosphere, Mike, everything you created there, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Look, it's not like too many other places. It's very eclectic, lots of art on the walls.
Very unique.
A real communal place, and look, I love it.
Yeah, and I love the shop that you've got going as well. There's some really cool stuff there.
Yeah, we have a retail section there too,
Yes.
so you can buy lots of gifts and paraphernalia and some quirky stuff as well.
Yeah, I've got some cool fridge magnets there. Mike, you've leapt into business, politics, and parenthood. What's one leap that didn't land the way you had hoped but taught you the most?
Well, look, the most recent thing was I ran as the Liberal candidate for
Yes.
Midland at the WA state election, which was a wild ride. Here's the thing, like a lot of people who go into politics position themselves to be there.
Yeah.
They spend 10 or 12 years, they join the party, they get to know people, they forge out their career, which community groups they connect with and what they're going to do. And they spend a decade setting themselves up to be in a position to be able to run.
It's very strategic.
Yeah. I joined the party once I decided to run. So
Love that.
yeah, so look, I was asked about a year and a half ago, would you run? And I was like, and initially it was very flattering, right? And
Sure, of course.
So first off, I said, look, I need a month to think about it, and because I wanted to make sure it wasn't an ego thing,
Yeah.
because I don't want to do things based on ego,
No.
because it's not about me, right? So, and then at the end of that month, I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm not so sure, I thought I've got a busy life. I've got lots of kids. I've got foster children. I've got a couple of businesses. Life's busy. And so, I sort of sat back on it and I'll just see how it goes. And then throughout the course of that year, I had a lot of different people who would actually just come up and go, hey, you ever consider politics? You should have a crack. And other people just sort of harassing me.
As well.
Yeah. And then finally, I was at a function on Melbourne Cup Day and I happened to be sitting next to a friend of mine who's involved with the Liberal Party. And I leant over to him and went, all right, I'm in. And he says, are you a member? And I wasn't. So so I said, okay, yeah, sure, I'll become a member. And he goes, well, it takes a month. I was like, oh, well, we've got an election in March.
Yeah.
It's not much time for that. So
No.
sure enough, we signed on that day online, and a month later I became an official member. Then the endorsement process. So I finally got endorsed on January 15, and with an election on March 8, we had a 7-week run at this thing. And now, look, in politics, that's not long.
I was going to say it's normally it runs for a lot longer, doesn't it?
Well, the people start campaigning a lot longer. So you'll have some people who'll campaign for 4 years and get to know all the community groups, get to know the things. I had 7 weeks. And that comment I made earlier about people putting themselves in that position, I was in that position naturally because of what I was already doing in the community.
Yes.
So I'm the president of the Swan Chamber of Commerce because I'm passionate about the business community and growing the Eastern Corridor of Perth. I'm connected to the different groups that are feeding the homeless and looking after the most marginalised in the area because it's something I'm interested in and passionate about. And so I know a lot of people. And so when I joined, it wasn't like I need to now go out and meet all these community groups. I knew them. And so I already had a presence in the area. People knew me or knew of me. So that was really, really interesting. And then, of course, we took this crazy ride, which is politics. And we had so many amazing opportunities that I just laugh at thinking about today. Like for the state campaign launch for the party, it was the leader at the time, Libby Metten, the now current leader, Basil Zemplis, a couple of other, it was one other candidate and one other sitting member were the speakers, but it was also me.
Yeah, wow.
And so I rock up at this a venue and they play Thunderstruck. And I lean over to the MC and I say, I'm not a bogan, right? And they go, don't worry, lean into it. And I come out and present this story, present my message. And there's all media there and we've got the places jam-packed. So the next day I'm on the news, I'm in the paper, the West Australian and the Australian. The Australian said I was the rank outsider for the safe Labor seat of Midland, whose mullet and Midland, the new Dalkeith slogan, has made him a cult-like figure.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm in stitches because I'm just like, it's just me. I'm just, this is just me having a go. And so we had great opportunities. I had TV crews follow me around and I had, we're on the Channel 9's running mates like 4 weeks in a row. And for a safe seat that hasn't ever been in anyone but Labor's hands for the last 28 years, we got a hell of a lot of attention for it. So that I'm really proud of. But at the same time, I ran fully believing that I could win that seat. And so I learned a lot through the process. It's probably the better than any management course you can go on.
I can imagine.
You cop a lot of flack and you have to learn how to shrug all the negativity and the horrible things that people say once you put yourself in the public life. Look, I had great advice. The advice was if they don't know you, it's not personal.
Right, okay.
And so, and look, you're so busy and you're so focused on this end goal. You don't have time to wallow in the misery.
No.
And because there's so much of it, there's so much hate. People made up lies about me and were sharing them. And you don't even bother responding. You're just like, oh, we'll just move on.
Wow.
And it was, we trended on Reddit. I had a random phone call at 8 o'clock at night from a guy in a different electorate going, I'd vote for you, mate, but I don't like what they're doing to you on Reddit. So we blew up on Reddit, 800 comments.
Goodness.
Apparently I'm the director of a mega church. I'm the president of the Liberal Party who was behind Christian Porter.
Wow.
Just the stories that were coming out.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was negative. A lot of it was funny. And it was all based on the fact that I had a mullet in my photo.
Absurd.
So, but look, it was a wild ride. I learned so much from it. I learned that when you can get a group of people focused on something so intensely, you can make great change. And although we didn't win, we did get a 16% swing, which was very good. And got to meet so many more great people in the community and got to highlight some of the areas that I think are needed, that need more support from government in the region as well.
Firstly, Mike, so brave for running and in such a short time frame as well. I think that is something you should be so proud of because not many people have the, I'll say, guts to do that, to just throw yourself in there and just hit the ground running. I guess, is that something that you say the public isn't fully aware of when you do put yourself in those positions? Like just the sort of the hate that comes with it, the constant sort of judgment? Yeah,
look. There's no way that people who the comments that people write, they would never say that to your face. And I think that's the downside of social media, of course, is the negativity. And you only have to join any local community group, even if it starts off with great intentions, for it to turn toxic at some point.
True.
And so I think, it's important to protect yourself against that. The good thing is I had good people in my corner that I could share, when I was feeling flat or feeling a little bit destroyed. But at the same time, when you're so focused on something, you just have to reset constantly. It did come as a surprise. I knew it was coming, but it still came as a surprise because I've always seen people in the spotlight, they cop this hate, but none more than a politician. They cop. What they cop is next level, and their words get skewed. They may say a slight thing, and it gets skewed into something different else. They might be spending 10 minutes talking about a topic, and there'll be one 10-second grab that they use that makes them sound sound really negative. So look, it's just a really interesting space to be in, and I now feel like I have a connection to all these public figures who cop this stuff all the time.
It's a lot.
But it's a bit like when you walk into a room of business owners, you instantly have that connection because you both know what it's like and how hard business can be.
Yeah. And that experience, Mark, what did it teach you about your own ego, and how did it shape your definition of failure or success?
Great question. Do you know? After all the dust settled, I copped a lot of calls and people saying, "Mike, you did so well," and "Mike, you did fantastic," and I said thank you, and I took that graciously, and then someone called me who from the political world who called me and said, "Mike, you did great," and I said, "Did I?" Because I felt like I could ask them. I said, "People keep telling me this, but I don't believe it. Like I didn't make it. I fell short." And they explained what you did, and in the short amount of time that you did it was amazing. I felt as we started that this could have been a timing issue, not having enough time to just really get that impact. And what we did in that short period was incredible. But once they explained to me why it was really good, I actually am very proud of the run. And so, even in that loss, it's something I can be proud of the experience and what we did and what we accomplished. And what I've noticed is since that time, I'm now more aware. So behind the scenes, I'm fighting for these different groups and community groups to get funding or to get bridges built or to get things moving and happening. Maybe just not being in the limelight and maybe not doing it with a title of MP, but I'm still out there just making a difference.
Yeah, which is incredible in itself. Was there one thing that it taught you about human nature?
Was there one thing that it taught me about human nature? Not really. I just think I just think what do I think it taught me about human nature? Look, it hasn't put a damper or negative on anything for me.
Yeah.
I still love people, and I think people do things for reasons, and they might be aligned with a particular person or a party or a belief system, and a lot of the times it's their football team, and so if this person wears a red T-shirt, they're the person I'm backing, and if this person wears a blue T-shirt, no, I'm against that person, and I understand that because I don't like the West Coast Eagles. But look, it hasn't really changed my thoughts on people or humans or anything. I just know that there's people who are really passionate about what they believe in. And they're really passionate about their cause. There's many times where I've gone to write responses to people on other people's posts,
Sure.
and I've actually pulled away and said, no, I'm not going to add to that because I'm just going to just let that one sit and see how it goes from there.
Mike, I believe you're someone who is making massive change and impact. If you had one, what would have been your first uncomfortable truth to speak from the floor? If you're comfortable to share, of course.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so what would be your first uncomfortable truth to speak from the floor? So what's one thing where would you have started with sort of making those changes? Or, sharing something that people need to hear?
In the political forum?
Yeah.
let me think about that one again. Can you go that question again, Tracy?
Sure. So if you had one, what would
Mm-hmm.
have been your first uncomfortable truth to speak from the floor?
Uncomfortable truth. I'm struggling with that again, getting an understanding of what you
I
mean
think
by
it might
that.
be something that you feel strongly about, but other people might not necessarily agree. It could be that you want to, an example would be maybe there's a group that you feel are entitled to a grant and they don't qualify or they don't get it, for example. It's something that you feel passionate about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting idea. I really enjoy listening to people and understand people have different viewpoints on different topics. There's certain things that I value. There's certain things that I value that I might disagree with someone on. But I do feel that in that role, that your responsibility is to represent the community, not your own necessarily your own personal belief system. Although that's important and needs to frame who you are. So in regards to an uncomfortable truth, I think sometimes it's having to make those tough decisions on things that you're not necessarily sure on, and relying on the experts. So in that role, people often think that you just need to know everything about everything.
Yes, I do.
And I remember at pre-poll, I had guys come up to me, and before they voted, they wanted to know my stance on a particular topic, and I just said, I don't know, mate. I don't know. I don't know about this topic. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, my focus is on this region and what this is about. I said, if I need to know about this, this is when we pull in the experts, because I can't be an expert in everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it comes down to. And unfortunately, politics is a game of compromise. And so, in order to get the best result that you believe for the people, you have to compromise with other people to get that idea through, or to get that concept through. So I'm sorry, Tracy, it's a bit vague for that answer.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's completely fine. And do you feel like business is like that in some ways as well? Like, it's not compromise is maybe not the right word, but you constantly, having to be the person to make decisions for your team, for your clients. You kind of pivot. You have to see what's working, what's not. Like, do you think politics and business has that in common, where you kind of, you're constantly putting yourself out there. You have no idea if it's going to work or not. You just have this faith in yourself, or your mentor has faith in you. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Oh, it's all very similar.
Yeah.
You're fighting for the best deal, and you're fighting to win people over. You're fighting to win customers. It's all very much the same game. You're competing against the cafe down the street.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're leaning into it, and there's no reason why you can't actually be friends with those people and actually learn from each other and grow together. I heard this term recently, and it was not competition. It was called cooperation? It wasn't. Yeah. Anyway,
Like collaboration more so?
It wasn't collaboration. It was competition. The idea was behind. Maybe I'll look at it later and message it to you or something, Tracy. But the idea was that often we look at competitors as being they're our enemy. But then there's this also concept of looking at competitors as your friends, and even though you're competitors, working together to grow both your businesses.
Sure.
Whether it be cafes in a region, and we've actually got a private group where we've got about a dozen cafes, and we all support each other. So we're throwing ideas out, and we're about to do a burger off competition. So everyone puts their burgers up and vote for the best burger. But what we're encouraging is all our customers to go see the other cafes.
True.
And by doing that, we're growing our own business and expanding our profile and our brands to other people that might not usually connect with us. And so this idea in business that even though we're competitors, but we're working together to try and build each other's business too.
Yeah, I really like that. Now, Mike, you guys have got a second cafe. Is it in is it Swan Valley? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's in the Swan Valley. It's in Henley Brook. It's
It's
sort of right in the middle of a housing estate. So it's got this amazing park, very different to what we do in Midland. Great park, perfect place for the kids. You can play basketball, kick the soccer ball around. But that's something that we've had now for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that's going out there in the Swan Valley.
Mike, what's the difference between bravery and recklessness in your world, and how do you know which one you're acting from?
Okay. Look, I think I think bravery is standing up for something that is important and
Mm,
believing for it. Recklessness is just throwing caution to the wind and just and of probably not making decisions based on facts.
yeah,
Is allowing uh, things to happen within your business that you're not aware of because someone else is looking after it, and that's not the area that I like to look at, or
sure.
I'm not the um, I'm not the guy that usually covers that stuff. So you just leave it for
Mm,
someone else, and then 6 months later you discover that actually that wasn't the thing that you're wanting it to happen,
yeah.
and then now you've got to go repair that mess. I
Mm,
think that's recklessness, and I've been guilty of it, many times in my
same.
business journey,
Mm,
where I think someone's got my best interests at heart, and through not trying to do the wrong thing, they have been doing the wrong thing.
mm,
So I think that's recklessness, and I think bravery is actually tackling that and tackling those persons. I'm not someone that enjoys confrontation,
right.
um, uh, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
It's important, but I don't enjoy it. And so sometimes, those decisions that we have in business where we go, oh, I really got to talk to this or address this
Mm,
issue, but I don't want to upset this, or the timing's not right. And we make all these
mm,
excuses
true.
about why we don't do these things right now. And we need to actually, this is the time when we need to be brave,
Mm.
because not making those decisions is reckless. Yeah, that's what I believe anyway.
And Mark, if someone came along, bought Crooked Spire, and you had to start again or start a new adventure, what would it be and why?
Yeah, look, hospitality I've discovered is so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, I love hospitality. You get to meet so many people. The young people it's many young people that you get to work with. The customers are amazing, and people can be fickle as well.
Oh,
Customers
yeah.
can be fickle too, but
Mm.
it's such a beautiful industry. The only problem is there's a lot easier ways to make money. And so when you're slinging $5 coffees, in order to return a good profit, you need to sell a hell of a lot of
I
$5
seem to
coffees
remember
to
you
make it happen.
saying, yeah.
So there's a lot of other industries that are easy to make money, but
Sure.
it's a balance of life, isn't it? Is what is it
Mm.
that you enjoy and love versus what is it that's going to give you that financial freedom too?
Yeah.
So it's finding that balance. So would I do a cafe again? Maybe,
Hmm.
but I'd probably look for something new and fresh.
Yeah. And Mike, you've opened doors for others. What do you want the people you've helped to say about you when you're not in the room? Shameless brag moment.
Do you know, I just, I just think I love the idea of, I enjoy being generous.
Mm. And you
And,
are.
and if someone said that I was generous behind my back, I'd love that.
Yeah.
And it's, generous in whether it's time, spirit, energy, whatever. For me, I think that's really important. Look, I'll share a story with you that was sort of pre my business journey. When I was back working in that steel company, I was effectively repping for a steel manufacturing business, and I went to a manufacturer, and I had to meet with the director. He was the owner, big business,
Mm.
was worth a lot of money. But he was just a horrible person.
Uh,
He was horrible to me as the representative. He was horrible to his staff, and he just wasn't nice to deal with.
yeah.
And he was a bit of an arsehole. I don't know if I can say
Of
that.
course, go for it. It's all
But
good.
as I left there, I sat in my car and I'd met enough of these guys. Maybe it was that industry, I don't know. But I met enough of these guys to know that to be disappointed that these guys who were at the top, who owned it, who were making the big money, who were running the businesses, they were just assholes.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in this car one day, and it was a really pivotal moment for me. And I held onto the steering wheel, and I'm a person of faith, so I prayed,
Yeah.
and I said, God, I want to be in that position, but I don't want to be an asshole.
Yeah.
I want to be kind. I want to have a great business. I want to have great wealth, but I
Mm.
want to be a good boss, and I just want to be a kind person. And that was like a prayer and a cry from my heart.
Yeah.
And and it was a moment that I remember as a 20-year-old or mid 20-year-old,
Mm.
and often I think about that prayer because it frames how I do business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Mm.
I've had moments like that as well, where you just sort of, it's like a deep prayer from within your soul, and you're just like, oh my God, please guide me or help me, be different from what I've experienced. But I
Yeah,
definitely think,
yeah.
Mike, you are that difference that you prayed for.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's a lie business owners tell themselves that you wish you could erase from the culture completely?
Okay, a lie business owners tell themselves
That you wish you could erase from the culture completely.
is that being the boss, that because you're the boss, you're important.
Yeah. Oh, damn. It's
You know,
news to me.
yeah, look, and I think this is that ego. This is that ego thing. Is and I see it, and it's every human being's valuable. Every human being's
Yeah.
important, and what's always funny in business is the people who have the most impact on your customer, depending on your business, of course. But that person who's standing at the front, taking the money or meeting the client, is probably the least paid person in your business.
Yeah.
Their attitude and what they bring and their service is actually more important than maybe someone in management or middle management.
Yeah.
It's actually what they're doing. And so I think just because of your role or your bank balance or the area, that it doesn't make you more important than anyone else. And
Yeah.
often the best ideas come from the floor, not from the boardroom.
True.
And so if you can engage your people to be part of the journey and help them feel like they're an owner as well,
Yeah.
I
It's
think
powerful.
your business is going to be in good hands.
I noticed a big change in my team when we rebranded, and they were all on board. I mean, they were overseeing it. It was I had to step away because it was something I wanted them to work on, not for Tracy to be involved, kind of guiding it. And what happened, it kind of glued them all in a way that I don't think would have been possible had I sort of been like, managing and saying, X, Y, Z. I just gave it to them. I was like, right, I'm going to trust in God and the process, let them oversee it. And something really beautiful happened in that it kind of brought them all together. And I think they feel so invested in Design Studio Perth as well, which is great to see because, again, it just was like my dream and, my business and that, but they've actually bought into it, which is so great.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Mike, your wife and you are foster parents. What's one belief about love, parenting, or resilience that has been completely redefined for you through this experience?
Well, look, I really love being a foster carer, and being able to be that difference in someone's life. I'm really proud of my kids and how they've handled it.
Yeah.
Because I've got four boys myself,
Wow.
so we've got four
Yeah.
homegrown kids. And our first young lady that joined us was 16 years old, and she was older than our oldest. And for her, it was the first time she's ever lived in a family. And so, look, it was messy.
Yeah.
Because life is messy.
Of course.
And, when you're dealing with, these kids that we talk about, they're all victims of trauma. And, it's traumatic to be taken from your parents. It's traumatic to be placed into a family. And so they get quite used to it and they get used to the system. And so for this young lady, this is her first time actually living in a family.
Wow. At the age of 16?
At 16.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so this was our opportunity. It was her last opportunity because if this didn't happen, then she would have stayed in a home with
Sure.
revolving carers till she was 18. And so, we feel blessed that we were able to be part of her life for that season. And she's still part of our life. She's now 22. She's bought a house in Armidale. She's married. She's
great.
got a baby. She's got a second baby on the way, and just doing fantastic. And so, look, we're really proud of her and proud of the kids, and we love being able to make that difference. And it was something we even decided to do before we got married. So, has it changed my thoughts on things? I've seen how messed up the system is. So if anything, it's highlighted the fact that when you have these kids in your care, you actually really have to fight for them, and you've got to fight for them, with the department. You've got to fight with them for their well-being, their care, to make sure they're being looked after because no one else is fighting for them.
No.
Yeah.
And is that why your wife and you felt called to foster?
Look, we actually before we got married, we always talked about that. So I used to, in a previous life, before business, I ran a youth group. So I ran a youth group and had heaps of kids every Friday night. We were running around doing activities and those sorts of things. So I was always connected to young people and teenagers and just helping them navigate that time. And often at that season, that's when they pull away from their parents, and so we need healthy role models for kids at that age. So I was able to do that, and it was a great privilege. My wife, with the church we're involved with, was looking after the children. So she has a huge heart for children. So before we got married, it was something we always wanted to do, was to adopt. But unfortunately, we kept having babies, or we were on IVF. And when you're on those, they don't let you be on the waiting list.
Oh, I see.
So we got to the point where we went, look, let's just go to this information session about fostering. And so then that helped us get into that side of things. So for me and my family, fostering is really important, and it's something that we're passionate about.
And Mike, it sounds like through everything that you've done, you always have such a heart to serve. Again, have you always been that way? Is this something that you've cultivated?
Look, I think church often does that.
Yeah, it does.
You serve in church and you volunteer and you help out and you pull chairs out and you go and feed the homeless and you do look for that. And I think being around church and I think what's interesting is often in the business world and people who are trying to better themselves, who are listening to this podcast, they listen to it because they want to get inspiration, they want to get wisdom because they're investing in themselves.
Yes.
When you go to a church and it's a healthy church and you've got people who are speaking to you and you're actually investing in yourself, it's a very similar process. So you're actually learning leadership. And there's often leadership pathways in church. You're learning about doing things, doing big things with a small resource because there's no funding for this stuff.
No.
So you just have to make things happen, and you beg and borrow and you ask and you make big things happen. You do these crazy projects. I remember we renovated a whole school in a day.
Wow.
And it was worth something like $80,000 to $100,000. They did a current affair episode on us as we did it, and it was just us putting a plan together, going, hey, here's a school in need. How can we? And we had 100 volunteers spend 6 hours there, and we repainted the school. We fixed up the staff room. We got them couches, and it cost us next to nothing because everything we just begged, borrowed, and asked, and got stuff donated, and the TV crews there. That became easy to get free building materials.
Yeah, wow.
And so you do these crazy ideas, and so you learn about that through that process, and it becomes not about you. It's not about your ego. It's about what can you do to help other people. And I think that's where you sort of learn a lot of those things.
And do you think that's where some business owners get it wrong?
Yeah. Look, it's definitely a balance. I think you can be too generous. I think you can be too generous. And I know people who've got great hearts who will never say no to anything. Sometimes you do need to. But at the same time, my personal belief is when you gift something, whether you're sponsoring a sporting club, I do not expect anything in return.
Yeah.
Now, they will promote me on their social media, but I don't care. I mean, let's be real. Your investment in a sporting club, they promote on social media, is not likely to bring you much business.
No.
We do it because we can.
Yes.
And it's a great privilege and an honour to be able to do it. And, often it's supporting a person that we know or a cause or something we believe in. And it's a great privilege to be able to do that. So I don't have any expectation that anything comes back to me.
Yeah.
But, hey, look, life is like that. You be generous in one area and somehow something else, generosity comes back to you in another area.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's always like tenfold and more. It's most bizarre. Not that one ever expects it, but the universe always provides in so many ways. Mark, how has your understanding of success changed as your roles have shifted from builder to barista to boardroom leader?
Yeah, my thoughts of success. I don't know if it has changed much, to be honest with you, Tracy. I think I learned very early on, and maybe because it was that self-development stuff. Like I've always loved reading. I haven't always loved reading. There's been seasons where I've chosen to invest in myself and read, and I'm not into fiction. I love business books.
Same.
I love autobiographies.
Yeah.
The audible stories that you can download and podcast. And I think when in my mid-20s, I remember one New Year's Eve or one New Year's resolution was I wanted to read 3 books.
Okay.
Now 3 books a year doesn't sound like much, but at that time I'd only ever read one full book, and that was for school.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to read 3 books. And you know what? I did. I read 3 books that year. The next year I decided I'm going to read a book a month. And so, as a 21-year-old, I decided I'd read a book a month, and they were all leadership books. And I just loved the content. And, when I'm reading these books, I become that person.
Yeah.
I remember once reading How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I've read that one.
And I was up to the chapter about just smiling.
Yeah.
And so I just read that chapter. So I spent my whole day being in like rooms and I'd turn around and just try and catch someone's eye and smile at them. It was so awkward. But
might give that a whirl again.
Yeah, that's right.
People are like, okay.
But it's basic principles, right? And they're good things. And so you learn and so you invest in yourself. So early on in the journey, I read or heard a message from someone or a business speaker say that success is not a destination.
Yeah.
Because if it is, you will be disappointed when you get there.
Yeah.
So the success is the journey. And so I think it's important, we have goals and we celebrate our wins along the way. But if success is when we finally get somewhere, when you get there, what's next?
Yeah.
So success is this constant journey. And so for me, it hasn't changed. It's because early on I had that understanding, and that has sort of taken me through.
Yeah, it's a great understanding to have, because I had to catch myself on that one. I was so focused on the goal and getting to where I wanted to be that, I was forgetting to actually enjoy that journey. And like even with the podcast, there's times I forget to press record or or I get told I have a shitty mic when I first start. Or just, I kind of just had to learn to enjoy that journey, and that's just what it's about, at the same time. So thank you for sharing that. Let's say tomorrow you had to get a TED talk, nothing about business, politics, or leadership. What's one unexpected topic you would choose and why?
Geez, these are tough questions, Trace.
Oh, okay. Take as long as you need, no rush.
TED talk and it's non-business.
No business, no politics, no leadership.
Okay.
What's an unexpected topic you would choose and why?
You know what? I'd probably talk about fostering.
Yeah.
I think as we've gone more and more down this journey, often when people find out you foster, they go, "Oh, you're such good people." I hate that. I hate it. Like it's like, no, I'm just a piece of shit. Like,
but you guys are. I have to disagree.
But this is the concept, right? It doesn't take a special person to do it. And
I don't think so, Mike. I think it does.
No,
you
I
open
don't.
up your home, your life, your family,
I do.
your family dynamic. I think it's amazing.
Look, it is.
Yeah.
It is, but everybody can do it. And and if you can open your house up or open your life up to allow another person in, I think it's possible. Often the comment I get back is, "I'll be so hard to see them go." Now, we haven't actually had to see any children leave our care. And if that happens, we will probably go through a grieving process, and I understand that.
Yeah.
What I encourage people who say, "I've always wanted to do that, but I'm not sure, I'm not this." You don't have to sign up for life. You can sign up and do a 4 Wednesday nights. You can actually learn about what's involved, and that's your training.
Sure.
From there, they'll come and inspect your house and make sure that you're safe. You can just be respite for a weekend for a kid, and you can be the respite for that kid every time that their foster carers need to go away, which might be 3 times a year, twice a year, once. And you can just have a kid in your care for 2 nights.
Yeah.
And what it does is you're part of that. You're part of that kid's life, but you're also helping someone else who's doing, who's got that kid in their life full time.
Yeah.
So, you don't have to sign on to do everything.
I didn't realise.
But you can have someone come for the weekend.
Okay.
Or, you can have an emergency placement where you get a last minute call and that child is just there as a transition.
Got it.
You're a safe place and a safe person that can do it. Now, not everyone's life, life enables them to do that.
Sure.
But if you can, and if you're ever interested, my thing is I just encourage people, give it a go, find out about it, do the training and never do it. That's okay. But you might do the training and go, "Oh, actually, I could do this part or I could do that." And that can help these kids that are out there struggling.
It's a reminder of the things we take for granted, right? Like just having, being somewhere safe, having a bed to sleep in. It's really a reminder of what we take for granted. I thought about fostering dogs for a while. I just fall in love with everything, and I was like, no, Tracy, don't, because I'm like, I'll just land up. There's a good little girl on Instagram. She's got like 10 chihuahuas, a pig, a duck, and she's lying there like singing with all of them. I'm like, that would be me. 'Cause I just can't let them go, so I haven't done it yet. But no, Mike, thank you so much
No
for sharing.
dramas.
Mike, if you could go back to
Yeah.
when you first started your gardening business,
Okay, sure.
what would be one piece of advice or two that you would give yourself?
I would, the advice I'd give myself was this. So for me, I will often, like I'll start things and go, I'll come back and fix that stuff up later. And that's bitten me more times than it hasn't. So it's like, oh, hang on, we're doing this. We've just got to keep doing this. I'll come and sort all these other things out later. I would really have loved to have had them sorted out so they didn't come back to bite me.
Sure.
So that would be my advice.
Great advice. Mike, any final words of wisdom, perhaps for someone who is going through what you experienced in those 8 months where you lost your job 3 times, things were really tough. Any final words of wisdom you could give there for someone that is going through a really tough time and perhaps needs a bit of light shined in their life?
Yeah, I would love to give some advice to those people, is to know that this is only temporary. And so do whatever you can to try and get the outcome that you're trying to get. If it means knocking on that door, if it means being brave enough to do that thing you've been putting off, go and do it. Get some people in your corner who are there to support you and back you, and listen to great wisdom. Find a podcast or a book, read it, and just soak that in. And when you hear of other people's success, come take that yourself and imagine that is your life as well. And that can help keep you going. But what I would encourage you is, even in some of the darkest times, it just becomes part of your story, and it becomes part of that thing that you overcome. So don't despise that space. Just know that something better is coming, and you just got to keep going.
Mike, where is the best place for our listeners to go should they wish to connect with you, other than going to Crooked Spire? Just saying.
Look, you can jump on all the socials. So you can check out Mike Matich on LinkedIn or Facebook. Or
your guys' TikTok's great as well, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
I often binge it. I'm like, this is great.
And you can also check out our Crooked Spire page. And if you text any of those things, it'll eventually come to me.
Yeah, Mike, thank you so much for our chat today, and thank you for how much you're in service to everyone. It's really great to see, and I believe that the world really needs more people like you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for this great platform that you're creating. It's amazing.
Thank you. Again, all the different opportunities people have opened for my life has led me here, and I'm just so grateful to be able to do this.
Keep it up.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Take
Cheers.
care.